Hi, this is David Muty of EffectivelySpeaking.com, and I'd like to share with you a few thoughts about overcoming the fear of public speaking. Specifically, are you able to overcome your fear? Well, the great news is, yes, you can, and you can do it with less effort than you ever thought possible. But before we get into the material, I want to take a moment and talk about the presentation. I think you'll agree that content is more important than a flashy presentation. And so that's what you're going to get, a lot of content that you can use right now to start overcoming your fear of public speaking. In addition, this material can be very powerful in your life. It can make changes, but it's up to you to decide when it's appropriate to make the changes and how to make them. Back to the content. Overcoming your fear, you can do it. And how do I know? Well, first of all, I overcame my own fear. I was in a difficult spot where I was being forced to speak in public, and I was terrified. I learned as much as I could about public speaking and gave the presentation. I was surprised by the results. They were positive. I started learning as much as I could about public speaking, and then I stumbled upon something. I started incorporating other areas of knowledge that I knew, and I came up with a method of overcoming fear. I've helped others with this material through in-person, one-on-one mentoring, through workshops and classes that I've conducted, through my own website, and through my audio e-course. Now, can I help you? Well, I've received emails from people telling me that their fear is worse than normal. They doubt if they can ever overcome their fear, that they think there may be a medical or psychological problem, that it's futile. Is that where you're at? Does it seem futile? Well, I've got news for you. It's not futile. And even though you're among the 75 to 85% of people who are afraid of public speaking, I know that you can overcome your fear, because the same people who wrote me and told me that it's futile wrote me back and said what a help the thoughts I'd shared with them were. But before we get started, this is going to take some effort. Wait a minute, isn't that a contradiction? Didn't I say that it was going to be less effort than you have thought possible? Well, it's not really a contradiction because it's a different form of effort. Let me explain. How do most people attempt to overcome their fear? They do it through what I call the brute force method. That is, they get up and they just try to speak as many times as possible in hopes that their fear will go away. Does the brute force method work? Well, from my own observations, I've seen many speakers attempt it, and it hasn't worked for them. I know of many famous speakers who were accomplished and should have been over their fear, but they still felt fear. And of course, what's most important for you is your own personal experience. You've most likely tried the brute force method, and most likely, no, it's not worked for you. So what does work? Well, this is where the effort comes in, because I'm going to ask you to change your approach to overcoming your fear. Stop using the brute force method and start looking at other methods. I'd like to share some of my program, 3 Simple Concepts to Overcoming Your Fear of Public Speaking with you. Now, the basic 3 concepts are knowledge is power. And the idea behind that is that understanding your fear and where it comes from, and understanding how to put together a speech and deliver it can go a long way in reducing your fear. The next concept is paradigm shifts. It's very powerful, and we're going to come back and focus on that in a moment. And finally, how the mind works. We discuss some psychological concepts that are working against you in overcoming your fear. But by understanding them, you can turn them into an ally, and they'll work for you. In addition, we talk about how the subconscious mind is actually sabotaging your attempts. So let's go back to paradigm shifting. Paradigm shifting is the most effective way of changing our behavior. Hey, I didn't say that. Stephen Covey said it. First of all, let's talk about what a paradigm is. A paradigm is an individual's viewpoint or perception of his or her situation. A paradigm shift involves changing how we perceive our situation in order to modify the behavior. If I identify a common misperception of public speaking and it applies to you, then embrace it. Don't just take it as academic knowledge. Think about it. Adopt a new viewpoint and shift that paradigm. A common misperception of public speaking is that your audience is judging you. They're watching for every little slip-up, stutter, stumble, lost place, etc. If you make one mistake, they will write you off as a speaker. They have a mental scorecard that they are working through as you speak, putting a big red X beside every mistake. Okay, reality check. Think back to the last time you listened to someone speaking in public. Was the presentation flawless? Did you mentally discount the content every time the speaker stumbled? Did you think less of the speaker as a person every time he or she had to look at his or her notes for more than a second? Of course not. So why do we perceive our audience as judging us? Our perceptions are often based on previous experience. For many of us, our first experience public speaking was in fact being judged or marked in a public school presentation. Now, it was out of our control. We didn't necessarily understand what went into a successful presentation. So the situation was stressful and had a high potential for humiliation in front of our peers. Now go back to the public speaking experience we were just thinking about. Why were you there? To get the information the speaker had and you needed. Maybe you needed to be informed, persuaded, or even entertained. But you were there to learn what the speaker was sharing. Warning, huge paradigm shift here. Your audience is not your adversary. They're your ally. They want to help you. Now, remember, you made a commitment. Change your point of view about your audience. They're not there to judge you. They're there to, in fact, aid you in getting the information across to them. What about another common misperception? How about how we interpret our nervousness? You know, our thought process goes along these lines. I'm about to speak in public. I'm feeling a little nervous. I know that public speaking is the number one fear of our society. Did I mention I'm feeling a little nervous? Oh my goodness, I must be terrified! Let's look at a different way of viewing that information, or a different approach. I'm about to speak in public. I'm feeling some nerves or some nervous energy. I can use that feeling, that adrenaline, to charge my presentation with energy. Now, have you ever attended a flat presentation with no excitement where the speaker just drones on and on? They're deadly. It's when you put some energy into the presentation that they become alive. And these emotions that you're feeling can be positive. Now, you probably don't believe me that it can be done, right? Well, ask yourself, why does nervousness help us perform in other situations but not in public speaking? Why does a baseball player hit when he's feeling nervous? Why is the golf swing smoother in a tournament? Because of how these people perceive the nervousness. So how do you use this? The next time you're about to speak and you recognize the panic cycle starting, say to yourself, I'm feeling energized. Now, your subconscious is always listening. Give it a positive paradigm to think about. Remember now, you made a commitment. If you looked at your nervous energy as a negative, it's time to change your paradigm. Want more paradigms? Well, what about these? The audience can sense my nervousness. I'm a terrible speaker. There's nothing worse than public speaking. There's even paradigms that tell you how to deal with fear that need to be changed, like imagining your audience in their underwear and focusing on the back of the room. Where do you go from here? Well, first of all, reflect upon that commitment that I've been driving home, because it can really make a change. And I want you to shift your paradigms. Your audience is there to support you, not judge you, and feeling some nervous energy is positive. Want more information? Then please visit my website and sign up for my newsletter. In addition, watch the next video, Why Does My Fear Take Over, even when I know that it's not logical?